All right, everybody. Hopefully, everyone is doing all right, doing okay. Hopefully, your week is going well. You can hear it in my voice a little bit. My Philadelphia Eagles just won the Super Bowl, so we're definitely happy about that. Definitely going to be a good episode because I'm off good vibes. Different room today too, and I'm like the other rooms that I'm recording in are a little more warmer, and like this room actually, I don't know if it's air conditioned or maybe it's because it's a bigger room, so it's what's it called? It's like it's not cold, but it's like it's cool. Like I can sit here with my jacket on, whatever, right? But yeah, so good week so far. Hope everyone went to church. Yes. Oh, I guess I'm recording it's Tuesday. So you did what you went to church Sunday. You got some good food in. Um, we are what's it called? 2 weeks out of the fasting season for Orthodox people. But if you're not Orthodox, I know um what's it called? Oh my gosh, Ramadan's about to start, right? In like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. So if anything, regardless, I hope everyone's doing good and whatever they got going on, stuff like that. Again, mind you, I'm if you see me looking here, I'm looking at myself. But if I like, I'm trying to make sure I look at the camera, especially because like the lighting is better in this room, anyways. Like it actually is giving 4K, but the light is bouncing off my head because it's right there. But anyways, so my head is not shiny. I don't have oil on my face. I am moisturized. I'm not gonna lie. It's just like the skin is giving. But with that being said, let's continue and go on. So basically, what I want to do today is touch up on topics um, that I've talked about in other podcasts, but like I want to start and I want to kind of get them out the way because I don't really want to bring it up again because they're pretty repetitive and they're pretty like they might come up again, but I don't have to touch up on a whole genre or not genre, but a whole topic like in its entirety at that moment. I want to kind of get it out the way now. So like I can just say what I want to say. It's there. So if anyone was like, oh, what does Thomas think about this? Well, it's here. And obviously, I think it's like 3 or 4. So like the first one we're going to talk about is specifically for the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo faith, but it's going to be talking about English Kidase, English services. Second thing we're going to talk about is abortion. Third thing we're going to talk about is the LGBTQ community. Just I want to get those two things out the way because I know that is pretty. It's an ongoing conversation. And then the fourth thing that I'm going to talk about is Donald Trump. In a very small, like I'm not going to talk about politics. It's just more so what I like have to say about that. But anyways, it might be a shorter video because I really don't have anything OD to say about these topics, but there are some big hitters. So I want to kind of, like I said, try and Babe Ruth, Alex Rodriguez style them, Gunnar Henderson, that's a pull, home run them out the way, knock them out the park. But anyways, first thing I want to talk about is English liturgy. Like I said, obviously I'm a deacon, so this conversation, every time I go on TikTok live, every time like any type of interaction and this comes up, like they always ask me what my opinion is, and I felt that it was necessary for me to get that out because like I've had conversations with people. I gotta stop chewing gum when I make these videos because like it sounds like I have a lisp or like I stutter, but like, or I guess maybe that's my own. Like I'm thinking about it like too much. I'm deeping it in my head, but this question comes up a lot with me at least. Like I always get asked my opinion on this. And I had a conversation with a good friend like a long time ago. And we were talking about it, and I was very much like, "Hey, like, why don't you go? Whatever, et cetera, ABCD stuff like that." Originally, when it came to let's just start here. Originally, when it came to English Kidase and liturgy or mass or whatever you want to call it, when it came to that, I was very much like, "I already have my own church. Why am I going to go to another church to do the same thing?" Even if it's in English. Because again, I'm not perfect at Amaringa, but I grew up reading, grew up writing. I know the Fida, like I know how to speak, right? Like I'm fluent, you know what I'm saying? I'm not perfect. Like I'm not like as if like, I'm at the end of the day, diaspora, I was born here. So like, I like to say that, obviously I have a deeper voice. So like when I speak Amaringa, like it's a lot harder to sense my accent compared to somebody else. But like there's a slight accent when I speak Amaringa. Um, and like I don't, vocabulary is not like as cognate or as like efficient as it is in English, or like just even terminology or like sentence breakdowns and like creating sentences is it's not as complex or expert as like people who grew up there like learned there stuff like that, our parents stuff like that. But I like to say like as somebody who's born here, I'm like near top. I'm not no scrub. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, with that being said though, so like as someone who again like forget that even as a deacon I've learned Kidase, I've done Kidase. I've learned, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've been in that space for over, I mean, I would like to say for the better part of my, like, the last 22 years of my life. But, like, if I'm being, let's say in the game, like, I've been like a deacon or whatever, like, it's really the last 10 years of my life, right? So, since I've been heavily invested in the church. So, for me, like, this has been like a recent development in the past, like, year, 2 years, right? So, it's like, for me, it's like, this is coming up in the, you know, where I'm already developed as in my spiritual life to already know what I'm doing. To me, it was like, I mean, it's cool. It's a good concept. I'll go when I, want to or have time to, or it's convenient for me to. But like, there's no need for me to go all the time. And I still stand by that like topic or that idea. But I was telling somebody else, I was like, why don't you go more? Like whatever, like, etc. And she was like, it's not really did I just air her? I mean, I guess I didn't say name, so whatever. But she was like, it's not really meant for me. Like I'm not the intended target audience. And as somebody who is learning and is like, in that space of like marketing and like like making sure you're getting your point or your content or your product across to the right demographic, that's where I was like, okay, cool, like you're right. And that struck a chord with me because I was like, nah, like absolutely, like now that like the way she said it, like the way I feel makes a lot more sense why I'm not as inclined to go or inclined to be in that space. For me personally, like I like doing stuff like this. Like my way of teaching or my way of getting my point across or my way of whatever is with this. And with that being said, I like the social media aspect of like UOTY, YOTC spot or whatever, like that, like promotion of that, or like the posts or like the sermons, the podcast, stuff like that. I think that's beneficial. That's like the space that I would want to be in or that I have been in for the past, like, I guess, I've been making YouTube videos since 2016. I've privated a lot of them, but like you can go back and see some stuff from like 2017, 2016 on my channel. So I've been doing this for a long time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Granted, I'm not Mr. Beast, but like I've been doing this for a lot. Like I'm a vet. So when it like what I mean by that is that's why like I'm more drawn to do stuff like that. That's why when YOTC was a thing back in the day, after church we would all go because that's something that we could all like. That is like we are the intended target audience for that. And I think that's universally sound, like where people can be like, that's where like, and no one can really be like, oh well, that's not intended for me. No, that's Bible study, stuff like that, sermons, like that's intended for everybody. You could be like, it's not my form of whatever, cool, you can say that, but it is intended for you. Like you can't really like leave your demographic, if that makes sense. But going back to English liturgy and stuff like that, me personally, like I said, beyond the intended audience, stuff like that, um again, as somebody who can understand the language, stuff like that, I prefer like it kind of sounds weird to say, but like the efficiency of like not normal Kidase, but like good I'm adding a Kidase because of the fact that it's a little more efficient, like especially if you already know it, like the concept or like the consensus is that everybody knows it. So like it goes by a little quicker, a little faster. And for what it's worth, like how do I explain this? Like if you know how to read, right? And let's say you're reading your popcorn reading, you can tell the people who are like annoyed at the people who can't read as fast as the people who can. Because like I'm like example, like eighth grade, like I was always a fast reader. So I'm sitting here waiting for my turn. Then I'm like, okay, cool, da, 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 whatever I read, and I pass off to the next person. It's kind of like, damn, like he just read that so fast, but I'm sitting here like this. So I get it from that point. For the person who can read fast, who can understand it fast, you don't want to be with other people who can do that as efficient as you can. Now, again, not saying that people are like slow or whatever, but it's more so like people who quite don't know or don't understand or aren't at that skill level to be as fast as the person next to them, then going somewhere where it's a little more slowed down, it's a little more like rega or calm, and it's again it's made in a way for you to understand it better. Because obviously I could sit here and be like, well, at like not normal Kidase, but you know what I'm trying to say. At Kidase, where it's in Giz and Amaranya, they have the English translations on the board. Why can't you just read there? Again, that's assuming that that person is as competent or confident in their ability to do that as you are. So it's like, with that being said, the intended audience for me, or me being intending, oh, wow. I'm so glad I don't edit this so y'all can just see that brain fart. Me being the intended audience at one place and somebody else being the intended audience at another place doesn't make us different by any means, but it does. Yo, I need to stop chewing gum because why is the gum stuck to my tongue? Oh my God. This is so bad. I must spit this out. Anyways, that only like wow, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, long story short, there's no negatives to it. Like it's really only positives for each party on each side. Like you enjoy it here, I enjoy it there. At the end of the day, we're all family. We are family. Like you know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So what I've always been a proponent of is, or what I've always been like confident in my ability to say this is that people who hate on English liturgy or hate on English mezmor or hate on like for example, like there was posts on TikTok that were made that like, oh, churches were using iPads and stuff like that. Like me personally, bro, it's 2025. Like I don't really think it's that big of a deal. like I understand like the cultural appeal or like the traditional appeal of maybe not cultural but traditional for sure appeal of like like having it on paper or having it like like the book is holds significant stuff like that. But again, like it's 2025. Like at a certain point, like we need to understand that like it's about what you're doing more so than it is like what you're using, if that makes sense. Like to a certain extent, like there's extents, like there's like limits to like what I'm saying. But again, like on like like on a small scale level, especially of like what we're using to read or whatever, like until like someone makes a book or prints it out, like we have or had, I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but had to use that. And so it's like, bro, like what are we talking about? But like again, I'll say this out loud. I'm not the biggest proponent of English mesmer either. Like I don't, it's not the most like sometimes it sounds a little off. That like that's just how it my personal opinion. And sometimes there's really good ones too. But again, just because I'm not like there's a difference between not being a fan of it and then hating it or hating on it. I can say, hey, this is really not for me. And then like, oh, you like it? Cool, that's tough. It's almost not to compare like secular music or like Drake or whatever, but like someone could be like, yo, like I like Drake, but he likes or I don't really like Drake. I like T-Pain. Okay, well, I don't really like T-Pain. And then obviously that's a little different because I can disrespect T-Pain, but I'm not going to disrespect like English mesmer versus regular mesmer and be like, oh, well, you know, it's terrible. Like, what, bro? Like, just say it's not for you, if anything, but don't like completely like trash it. Like, that's my only kill with that. And there was a lot of hate because like for lack of better words, like it wasn't really heavily supported, and it took a lot to even get like that first or the first English church and spot like in DC or technically it's Maryland, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like it took a lot of effort, a lot of hard work to get it to that point. With that being said, though, I think people were like taking UOTY, YRTC, and all these conferences and taking it for granted because I think at first people weren't really expecting it to be like this church. I think they were just thinking like it would kind of correspond with like the regular. I keep saying regular and normal, but like with I get regular scheduled activities on Sundays when it came to regular Kidase or church, whatever, et cetera, ABCD. So I think when it eventually turned into like, hey, like this is actually gonna take over, like or not take over, but it's gonna become its own thing. It's gonna evolve. People weren't really ready for that. But I think at least within the last year or so, it's become something more recognized. It's become more important. And I think going forward, like I would want to see more churches that like bring that forward. And I know DC honestly was the best location for the first one because how many people, Opposite people, obviously, but how many people in general and like the dedication that there is in DC. I think, in my opinion, like DC is the best hub for not only just Ethiopian culture or whatever, but also just for like the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo religion in America. That's just my opinion. I think we have the most churches in the country in one. Like think about it, like Maryland, Virginia, and DC aren't really the biggest. Even combined, wouldn't be like the biggest state in the country, but we have the most churches, the most abishas in I mean, maybe not by like people, but like just the biggest congregation. So with that being said, you're combining a lot of like heritage and a lot of people and like towards one goal. So it's like I think I would like to see that in like Cali or like other places, stuff like that. And like for example, UOTY is a UOTYD or whatever. Like they have a sect in Dallas, and again, like stuff like that is really encouraging to see because that's how YLTC became spot, and that's how or like things like that continue to evolve. So with that being said, that continuation of like English in our religion is going to continue to grow. I think we should all want it to continue to grow, and is also going to save like the youth, and it's going to save people who weren't as lucky as me, and both parents couldn't teach their kids Amarinya or didn't want to or couldn't or like you know what I'm saying, like just didn't end up doing it. So it's like those people like now are, for lack of better words, they're converting because it's very hard once you're not in our religion, don't know the language or anything, to try and get in. Because if you don't know what, if it's just gibberish to you, like how would you ever understand what we're saying? You know what I'm saying? And again, like looking back at it, like when my generation has kids, I'm gonna have to teach those kids my not perfect Amarinya and pass it down to them and try and get them to like if I'm not as good as my parents, then I have to assume that my kids aren't even going to be as good as me. So, or getting like, we need to get them the right, education and teachers. And my biggest proponent, even with English, is I don't want the language of Amarinyangas to be lost. And I don't think it will. But I think like, I don't want it to be like, well, okay, cool, we have English. So like, we don't need to like learn Amarinyangas anymore. Let's not do all that because at the end of the day, Kidase still requires Giz. Like even if you want to replace them with Amarinyan parts. That's all I have to say really about English Kidase. Again, if you have any questions, if anyone has any questions or like if I didn't really hit a point that you wanted me to hit, then just let me know. But Next topic. I'm gonna do LGBTQ first because abortion will kind of tie into my topic about Donald Trump. But with the LGBTQ community, this should be a short, maybe like a couple minute thing that I have to say. As a Christian and as somebody who's grown up with, I'm not gonna sit here and act as if like there isn't a lot of homophobia in our culture and a lot in our, I wouldn't say like specifically like religion, but like culture mainly. The religion aspect is the religion isn't homophobic, but the people within the religion can be homophobic. That's what I'll say. That I don't think the religion itself teaches homophobia, but I will say, as for me personally, I don't. I do think that to be is a homosexual. I think heterosexual is straight, right? So to be homosexual to me is a sin. Um, but I also don't judge people off of it. Like if that makes sense. Like if someone is homosexual, it's like you as a person, you're fine. But like I just don't agree with what you're doing, if that makes sense. It's the same thing as if like one of your friends started selling drugs. Yeah, like bro, like you're cool, like you're a good person, but the fact that you're selling drugs is not an action that I'm willing to either A, be around you, be connect with you about. Like it's the same thing. And that's what I think people like miss when it comes to this topic. It's not like me saying like I don't surround myself with like people who are homosexual, whatever, isn't me saying, yeah, like it's not me being homophobic because I think people have the right to decide what type of people they surround themselves with, if that makes sense. Especially if there's actions that you don't agree with. And I think there's a way to do it without it being hateful. You know what I'm trying to say? And like, and if I have to, like, not have to, like, as if I'm forced upon, like, gun to my head, like, I have to, but more so, like, if I'm put in a position where I need to, like, be around that, like, it's not an issue. Like, I don't have a issue with, like, people. It's just that action I wouldn't want close to me in my life. So, like, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want it to be too, like, it wouldn't be a great connection, if that makes sense. It would be very much like acquaintances or very much like arm length type of friendship. With that being said, that's not homophobia, but I will say there is a lot of homophobia in our culture, in our the people like that we surround ourselves with. Let me say this for example. If you believe that LGBTQ plus people or like they're like that whole group, like I'm not gonna say the whole acronym or whatever, but like people like that, if they don't deserve rights, they can't vote, they can't get married, like whatever, like that's homophobia. Like they're still people at the end of the day. Like they can do whatever they want, especially because we're looking at it from be like a sin doesn't always need to be illegal, if that makes sense. Lying is a sin, but we're not gonna sit here and like criminalize people who lie, if that makes sense. So if you want to get married and I don't agree with it, cool, sure. But who am I to say you can't get married? You know what I'm trying to say? Who am I to say you can't adopt a kid? Like stuff like that. Like to me, it's like now we're kind of taking matters into our own hands with certain things that we shouldn't be, especially when we're basing that belief upon religious beliefs or basing that decision upon religious beliefs. So again, with that being said, like there's certain things, for example, like if somebody within that community wanted to get baptized or whatever, that's a conversation that you need to have with somebody a little higher than me. But in my opinion, that's also a decision that the church would make. And that's not something that like if a church denies that service, I don't think that's homophobia because that's coming from a place of, hey, we abide by these laws, these rules from given to us from God, coming down from the Bible, and like we pull it from there here to here. It's not hate, it's not like it's not like something personal against you, but our religion's sect law is this, so we can't provide that service. I think that's totally fine. But again, I'm talking about like getting legally married and like things that like countries need to, or let's say United States needs to provide stuff like that. Definitely should happen because why are you getting denied a service just because of activities you like to partake in? That's all I really have to say about that. When it comes to abortion, and I think again I'm gonna tie it into that. By religion, I'm pro-life. I don't agree with abortion. I don't think that there's ever really like a reason for it to be done. Even in like the most drastic cases, I don't think doing or making two wrongs equals a right. I don't think there's anything like, well, this happened to me. Well, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna follow it up by doing something wrong. Um, and I get that there's a lot of emotional and mental hurdles that come with that. And it's really hard for like again, this is my religious belief. right? So it's really hard for me to sit here and like to like juggle that. I mean, in my head, because like I mean, obviously, like I don't think I'll ever have to make the decision. But um, with that being said, though, politically, I'm pro-choice because that's my religious belief. That's how I think, and maybe people in my religion think, or people around me think, or in my culture think. But we're not all the same culture, and we're not all the same. We don't all come from the same background, mindsets. We're not. We don't all have the same right or wrong conscience built the same way. So with that being said, I do believe that when it comes like politically, like I'm pro-choice because who am I going to tell somebody else who was born in a different family, raised differently, like, oh, you need to like keep the baby. Like that's not, especially because like I said, there's cases like emotional where like someone was, I don't want to say the word because I don't want YouTube to whatever, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Or like if in instances like that, or if I don't know, like even just pure like not wanting to have a child right now. Like, who am I to be like, no, like you need to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't force anybody. Like, at that point, people need to make their own decisions and people need to live with their own decisions and live with the consequences or lack thereof when it comes to those. If somebody decides to do it and, like they feel guilty later, it's on you. If nothing happens, you don't feel guilty and you're happy with it, that's still on you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's your decision to make and you need to live with whatever like happens next. But with that being said, that's not my decision to make. So that's why if whatever it comes down to it, I am pro-choice when it comes to the law. I actually forget how I was going to tie abortion in with Donald Trump, but the last thing that I'll leave this episode on is that I've been seeing a lot of things. If you're Abisha, if you're colored, like if you're a person, or that's colored, wow, a person of color, um, an immigrant, child of an immigrant, know people, friends with immigrants, stuff like that, and you voted for Donald Trump, I just don't respect it. I don't see how that could ever be something where you look at it and you're like, that's the right choice to make. Um, didn't he? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he did just like completely evaporate the Department of Education. I heard people were going crazy about like FAFSA and like perhaps or potentially losing that and stuff like that. Um, Elon Musk has joined his staff. And also is trying to buy OpenAI at the same time. And if you didn't know, senior government officials or elected or unelected, but still, if you're in a position of power in the government, like high senior official, like I think he has an office in the White House. You're not supposed to be doing stuff like that, and they're like rewriting rules, obviously, to get him to do it because, well, Trump's there, so he can change that. I don't know how. I mean, maybe I don't know if he has to like go to the House or Congress or whatever, like what the rules and regulations with that are. But with that being said, though, um, I think there's a way to, and I'm not sitting here saying like me saying Trump doesn't mean that Kamala. Like I honestly don't think I don't know what was the right decision. Like I'm grappling with it to this day, obviously, but um, I think every president has their issues. Like again, Biden and how they handled the Israel and Palestine conflict definitely could have handled that a lot better. Even Obama, and I think a lot of people like to over he was the first black president, so people like to kind of like give him more credit than he deserved. But also, like I'll say this, he also inherited like a really, really, really difficult presidency when it came to like the depression, like the stock market crash and everything like that. But with my whole point being is going back to Trump. The main reason I want to talk about Trump and it was talking about because abortion about like how people can make their own decisions. I have I wouldn't not like best friends or whatever, but like I have friends who voted for Trump, and to a certain degree, like when it comes to decisions like that, why are we spreading hate when it comes to that? Like one of obviously it's not the most serious conversation we were having, but he came up to me, we were talking about it, and he was saying some things, and I was like, hey, like I just don't agree with you, but you can. He was being mad respectful about it, and I'm not gonna lie, like like when it comes to as long as it's not a crazy ideal or it's a crazy like thing that I can't morally, I can't like I can't follow, I'm okay. Like those conversations should be rampant. I think people denying those conversations is the issue. Like you're not willing to talk about it. You're not willing to learn. You're not willing to listen to other people, do your own research, and have these conversations with people. So you're just like if TikTok is your main source of information, you're lost. If Instagram Reels and like Snapchat, Twitter is your main form of information, you're lost. Pick up a book. Do some the phone can do other things in social media. Pick up a book. Do something other than simply dislike somebody for like something you saw on Instagram. It's like, oh well, he supports him and this guy did this according to Twitter. Like, no, like do your own research. Granted, like I said, like that can sometimes be a good source of news. But like at the end of the day, if you're basing in your relationships off of things that you've heard on the internet or like stuff like that, like what are you doing? Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Not like again, like I'm sitting here telling you this on the internet, right? But I'm more so even telling you like everything that I say, not that you should take it with a grain of salt, but you should definitely go back and still do your own research. And like that's why I'd say, like, yo, come to me, let's talk, have a conversation, ask questions, like let's learn together. And I think I said that last episode too. This is a collaborative environment. Like this isn't just me yapping. I mean, technically it is, but at the end of the day, like at some point, my goal is that like I will go live and I'll do this live and we can have these conversations live with people asking questions live. Because at the end of the day, like m- my podcast here isn't to say that I'm 100% right every single time. That's not what the point of this is. The point of this tell you exactly how I feel. Let's have a conversation about it. I'm not like I'm concrete in my foundation about like moral things and certain things with my conscience and what governs that. But when it comes to certain things like this, I'm giving you guys my opinion. So you don't need to agree with everything that I say. But a little shorter video. I think the last two or three topics were very like kind of like those are really opinion based, and we can have a conversation about those. But if you guys enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe. Almost at 1,000, like literally just like 15 more people. So subscribe, please, please, to get to 1,000. But yeah, follow me on socials. Hit me up, DM me if you have any questions. We'll talk about it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Wavy time.